In the black heart of World War II, some battles were fought in silence. With no gunfire, no bombs, only lies sharp enough to kill. This was a war fought not in trenches, but in the minds of the enemy. A war where shadows moved, machines breathed, and ghosts marched. By 1944, the Allies bled for every mile gained. The Germans? Relentless? Every advance came at a price paid in bodies. The US Army needed something unconventional, a unit unlike any in military history. They called it the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Only 1,100 men were chosen. Not hardened killers, but artists, designers, sound engineers. Men whose weapons were deception, distortion, and fear. They were given vague orders, cryptic briefings. Some thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Real unit insignias were taken from them. New, false ones sewn on. Even their names were sometimes altered. They became ghosts before the war began for them. They learned how to make the impossible look real. How to make nothing look like something that could kill you. Their tanks were rubber. Their planes, canvas and air. But to a pilot scanning from 10,000 feet, they were an army ready to strike. Artists painted shadows, oil stains, and battle damage onto air-filled shells, perfect replicas of war machines that didn't exist. Hollywood sound engineers recorded the mechanical heartbeat of war, tank engines, truck convoys, even shouted orders, then amplified them into the night. Loudspeakers could project the noise of thousands. In the darkness, the mind filled in the rest. The unit landed in France. Their first mission, draw German forces away from real Allied movements. A dangerous game of bait. They inflated tanks under cover of trees. Ran fake radio traffic. Played the sound of approaching armor into the night air. German reconnaissance planes flew overhead. Photographs taken. Reports written. The trap was working. Men walked in plain sight wearing false patches, speaking in rehearsed code, leaking rumors meant to be overheard. By morning, the Germans had shifted troops, away from the real attack. Lives were spared before the first shot was fired. The Ghost Army packed up in hours, leaving nothing but flattened rubber and tire tracks. Some nights, they moved in total darkness, inflating an entire armored division in a fog so thick it swallowed sound. They knew the Germans were watching from above. And that one mistake could mean death for everyone in the unit. Every detail mattered. The way a tank's shadow fell. The pattern of tracks in the mud. Even the laundry lines were staged with the right insignia. Once, while setting up, they heard German voices in the nearby woods. The deception continued anyway. If the enemy discovered the truth, they would be slaughtered. They carried sidearms. But against tanks, they were useless. In French cafes, soldiers dropped hints about fake troop movements. Every overheard word was bait. One mission required them to pose as an artillery unit. The guns were nothing but wood and canvas, but the enemy believed every one was loaded. They created the illusion of two entire divisions to pull German defenses away from the coast. Captured enemy maps showed ghost units marked in red, divisions that never existed. Many slept with boots on, knowing the Germans could strike at any moment. Every operation became more complex, more convincing. Failure meant hundreds, maybe thousands, would die. A false bridgehead was staged. Fake engineers worked in daylight. The real crossing happened miles away. Enemy artillery fired on an empty field while Allied forces slipped past elsewhere. Each mission required them to get dangerously close to the front. Sometimes, the enemy was less than a mile away. In Luxembourg, they bluffed an entire panzer division into preparing for a battle that would never come. Cold bit at their fingers as they inflated tanks in freezing winds. One slip, one noise, and they'd be found. They painted dark patches on white canvas to mimic frostbite on machinery. Code chatter became more elaborate. They could mimic an entire chain of command. Their biggest, most dangerous operation was coming, one that could decide the war. If the enemy guessed the truth, the crossing of the Rhine could become a slaughter. Near the Rhine River, they created the illusion of the US 9th Army, right where it wasn't. More than 600 inflatable tanks, trucks, and artillery were deployed in days. Loudspeakers blasted engine roars, shouted orders, and metallic clanks deep into the German lines. Scouts reported a massive force building. Troops were diverted toward the decoy. While the enemy prepared to strike the ghosts, the real 9th Army crossed the Rhine elsewhere. German artillery pounded empty fields. Not a single casualty, because there was no one there. They stayed in position for days, risking discovery until the real crossing was secure. When the order came, they vanished into the night, leaving nothing behind but trampled grass. Over the course of the war, they staged more than 20 deception operations. Many were just miles from the front lines. They were soldiers who carried no heavy weapons, only the knowledge that being caught meant certain death. Not once did the Germans realize the scale of the deception until after the war. When the war ended, their story disappeared into classified files. They were told to say nothing, not to families, not to friends. The Ghost Army stayed ghosts. For over 40 years, their work remained buried in secrecy. Even reunions were shadowed by silence. They carried their secrets into old age. Only in the 1980s did fragments of their story begin to surface. Documents revealed the truth, and the scale of the deception stunned historians. 1,100 men. Fooling an army of millions. Every mission was a gamble. Many lived with nightmares of being discovered. The Ghost Army proved that battles could be won without direct combat, by breaking the enemy's mind. For decades, their names weren't in history books. Their service unrecognized. In 2022, the US finally awarded them the Congressional Gold Medal. Only a handful of Ghost Army veterans were alive to receive it. Many went to their graves without ever telling their families what they'd done. They proved that victory could come from silence, shadows, and misdirection. Tens of thousands of Allied soldiers lived because of their illusions. The Germans wasted ammunition, time, and manpower on units that didn't exist. All they left behind was the impression of an army, and the fear it inspired. They fought without glory, without recognition, without even the comfort of telling their story. They turned the enemy's own mind into a battlefield, and won. Even now, their operations read like impossible fiction, but every detail is true. At last, the ghosts have stepped into the light. They showed that in war, the deadliest soldier may not fire a single shot. In the end, the Ghost Army fought a war inside the enemy's head. Inflatables that hissed with air became the sound of German defeat. Truck engines that never existed roared through enemy radios. When their final deception ended, they slipped away without fanfare. For decades, no one knew that art had defeated steel. Painters, set designers, sound men, turned into one of history's most effective military units. Now, their story haunts history, a reminder that not all heroes carry rifles. They were soldiers, yes. But more than that, they were magicians in a war where the stakes were life and death. And in the darkest hours of the war, they fought. And won. As shadows.